Hello you wee willy winkies, it's Andy Murray here for What Culture Wrestling, aka the Soy Cesaro, back for another nice wee chat about a topic that I think is going to become one of the defining discussion points when it comes to professional wrestling over the next few years. I am, of course, talking about the new wrestling war, and specifically, how WWE can win it in the most interesting way imaginable. Before we begin, though, I think it's pretty important to define two key terms here, those being win and war. On the surface level, it seems pretty simple. I mean, WWE are the giant, they're a colossus. They have the market share, they have the reach, they have the established reputation, and of course they have a massive pool of money that isn't depleting anytime soon. AEW, by comparison, well, objectively speaking, they just can't compete on that level yet. Now, subjectively, it's a different matter entirely. When you talk about things like match quality and storylines, that is entirely in the eye of the beholder. But, you know, as things stand, WWE is already streets ahead. But here's the thing about this war. You might look at that and say, it's not a real war, it's just a border squabble. And you're entitled to say it isn't a war because that's what discussion's all about. But here's the thing, Vince McMahon is a very competitive guy. He's a very petty, fired up man. And even if you don't think it's a war, he almost certainly does. And as far as winning the war goes, well, one version of that for WWE is pure and simple, running AEW out of business. But I don't think that's particularly interesting, especially from a discussion standpoint. So today, I'm going to talk about how they can win the war on a creative level, on a subjective level, because really, that's the most interesting thing they can do here. So, let's jump into it. I'm Andy for What Culture Wrestling, and here's how WWE can win the new wrestling war. The ratings battle that has already been dubbed the Wednesday Night Wars kicks off properly on October 2nd. That is the night that AEW finally debut on TNT, going head to head with WWE's NXT, which will be on the USA Network as a 2-hour broadcast for the very first time. And while I guess you could say that AEW and WWE have technically been at war with each other since AEW was unveiled in Jacksonville on the 8th of January, this is the first time they'll be jostling for ratings. If you're of the belief, as I am to a certain degree, that competition brings out the best in wrestling promotions, then this is a pretty exciting time. And I guess the most interesting, the best case scenario here is that we end up with two really awesome wrestling shows every Wednesday night. They're constantly trying to outdo each other by just being really great, and we can sit like we used to do back in the day with the Monday Night Wars. We can flick channels, we can catch up and enjoy 4 hours overall of just great wrestling. It'd be fun, it'd be exciting, it'd be a great time to be a fan, and hopefully it would also go some way to getting rid of that terrible mentality that's crept in. You know the one, my side rules and everything about it's great, your side sucks and everything about it's bad. It's just tribalism, it's really tedious. Just, you can enjoy both things, is what I'm saying. Now, AEW's pathway to victory in this war is unclear at the moment, although their first few viewership numbers will give us an indication of how well they're gonna do. As for WWE, well, they've been here before. And while Vince McMahon being out of touch remains a popular criticism, whether it's right or wrong, their pathway to creative victory is a lot simpler. Most predictions for AEW's first few episodes of TV, coming from TV experts, from wrestling experts, expect the numbers to fall somewhere between 400,000 viewers and 800,000 viewers. Now, that doesn't sound like a whole lot on surface level, and it's a damn lot less than Raw and SmackDown do at the moment, and certainly a number that AEW would have to improve on if they're to make progress. But remember, this is a brand new company, it's a startup. When you think about it in those terms, it's actually pretty impressive and a good starting block from which they can build. Most experts predict that when AEW hit TNT, their first few episodes are going to do somewhere between 400,000 and 800,000 viewers, which on the surface level doesn't sound like a lot, particularly when you compare them to Raw or SmackDown. But remember, this is a brand new promotion. This is a startup. They're beginning from scratch. It is completely unprecedented. And when you think about it in those terms, it's actually quite impressive. Now, the same odds makers and the same pundits predict that NXT will probably fare a great deal better, at least initially, and that's for a multitude of reasons, and they include, but aren't restricted to, wrestling viewers just being a bit more familiar with USA than TNT these days, WWE being the established market-dominating brand, WWE, of course, have increased star power. They could bring guys like Seth Rollins on the show to boost numbers quite handily. And of course, WWE will also use Raw on Monday nights to boost and advertise viewers and try and attract a bigger audience for NXT. And if you want a nice handy comparison point, the last time NXT aired on the USA Network was in December 2017. They did a handy little number of 841,000 viewers. But winning the wrestling war, the overall overarching wrestling war, means a lot more than this mere ratings battle. Vince McMahon knows that his promotion is much bigger than its developmental brand, and in order to win the creative battle and stop his main roster product's ratings from just chronically declining, he must unleash WWE's product at its most bombastic. Extreme Rules 2019 was everything that can be great about the modern WWE product. And yeah, the show did have its lulls. I mean, the last hour or so was kind of tough to get through at various points, but for the most part, when it was good, it was really, really great. And honestly, I think it's my favourite main roster WWE pay-per-view of the whole year. Let's take a few of those matches as examples. Let's look at Bobby Lashley versus Braun Strowman. That thing was an awesome monster match. It was a destruction derby, and really the kind of thing that you can only really do when you have two absolute hosses taking lumps out of each other. That is the kind of match that AEW just can't have because, well, they just don't have a whole lot of big beefy boys on that roster, Luchasaurus aside. Elsewhere on the card, you had Aleister Black and Cesaro scratching the work rate itch in under 10 minutes, and you also had certified wrestling genius Daniel Bryan putting together a low-key main roster match of the year contender as him and Rowan faced off against the New Day and Heavy Machinery. But despite all this, despite all the cool things that were going on this card, I think the very first match on the Extreme Rules lineup showcased exactly how WWE need to calibrate their product in order to become the best version of themselves. I'm not talking about the kickoff show here, I'm talking about the Graveyard Dogs versus Shane McMahon and Drew McIntyre, because that thing was magnificent. I'm not even doing a bit, earnestly, it was brilliant. It's often said that wrestling should be booked in a way that highlights the performer's strengths and hides their weaknesses, and guess what? That's exactly what this thing did. It had Shane McMahon and the aging Undertaker in it, for God's sake, but it was still a white-knuckle thrill ride, one of the best Shane McMahon matches ever, and certainly the best Undertaker match in years. Maybe since CM Punk. The crowd's absolute thirst for Shane McMahon's blood was increased with every perfectly planned spot. And if you were to distill everything that's great about WWE's big theatre spectacle and put it in one match, well, here it is. Honestly, if I can speak to my enjoyment of this match for another second, I enjoyed this as much as any match from this year's New Japan G1 Climax, except maybe Jon Moxley versus Tomohiro Ishii. It was a near perfect WWE action movie. It was designed to make you pop off your seat with all these explosions, not sit there and stroke your chin. Although both styles of wrestling are pretty awesome. You know what this match was? It was the wrestling equivalent of Hobbs and Shaw. Meanwhile, AEW are over there producing stuff like A Hidden Life. It was a big box office banger versus artful cans fodder. And that's exactly how WWE and indeed AEW should proceed. When wrestling fans talk about what WWE could do to improve their product, specifically between the ropes, a common argument is let the wrestlers wrestle. And to be fair, it's a pretty easy one to make with a roster this talented. A lot of people look at matches like Kenny Omega versus Kazuchika Okada, they look at the acclaim that those things get, and they think, hey, why don't WWE just do that? And honestly, I think if you took a Daniel Bryan, a Cesaro, a Johnny Gargano, a Tommaso Ciampa, if you took those guys and you put them in the G1 Climax, they would do just as well as your Ishiis, as your Ospreys, as your Okadas. So why not just let them do that on Raw or SmackDown? Because it just wouldn't work. It's like asking Michael Bay to go art house. Now, Ricochet on his day is one of the best wrestlers in the world. He's attention grabbing, he's spectacular, he can do things that nobody else can do. But WWE's setup will not allow him to have the kind of matches he was having in Best of the Super Juniors all those years ago. Because broadly speaking, WWE fans, they don't want those long drawn out epic matches, the kind of which we see in New Japan. What they want, and again, I'm speaking broadly here, is the sugar rush. Casual WWE fans want explosions, they want set pieces, they don't want 20-minute intricate grappling displays. But at the same time, what they also don't want is wrestlers forced to become the most boring versions of themselves. And if you want an example for that, just look at AJ Styles and Ricochet. Their matches were fine, they were technically solid, there was some decent limb work, but they were nowhere near the dream matches that we expected. It's not that WWE's performers aren't capable of pulling off a match like, let's say, Kenny Omega versus Pac at All Out. They most certainly are, they're among the best in the world. The problem is that WWE's framework isn't capable of pulling off those matches, and nor can it ever be. But at the same time, AEW's framework might not allow that promotion to pull off fun, popcorn bouts like the Graveyard Dogs versus Shane and Drew. And one thing we know for sure about AEW and the way they present their shows is that they're certainly incapable of pulling off popcorn characters the same way that WWE do. So far, AEW's one big attempt at a big, outlandish, bold sports entertainment style act is the Dark Order, and man, I feel really bad because they're a really great tag team and both Evil Uno and Stu Grayson are awesome. Working in tandem, they are spectacular in the ring. But the act sucks. These guys, they're just bombing, and it's because their presentation really doesn't work. It's outdated, it's antiquated. And those creepers, they're borderline problematic and more bewildering than intimidating. And of course, it doesn't help that meanwhile on WWE programming, The Fiend is doing such a good job of reviving Bray Wyatt's career. It's impossible not to compare the two acts because they're going on at the exact same time on different shows, but to greatly varying levels of success. Unfortunately, The Fiend just makes the Dark Order look kinda corny, and it's maybe time to send them back to the drawing board. And honestly, utilizing characters like this, like The Fiend, the big pantomime style character that WWE used to be known for, could be key as well, because so far, it doesn't look like AEW can pull that off. Now, normally you might take an argument like mine and think, this guy's head in the clouds, WWE is never going to improve creatively, but if you look at the past few weeks of Raw and SmackDown, there's been a real creative upturn there. We're not talking about a massive leap forward, but things are improving. The ratings still suck, but these are good, solid wrestling shows. Raw in particular, with Paul Heyman apparently having a big influence over how that brand does. Now, AEW, they've produced some mighty fine pay-per-views so far, but who knows how they're going to do through the relentless churn of weekly TV. They're untested in that regard. And of course, WWE's market share is indomitable and their mountain of money is basically Everest. They are never going out of business, even though the Khan's family's personal fortune eclipses Vince McMahon's. But here's the thing about that as well. For the Khans to turn a profit, for AEW to turn a profit, they're going to have to throw millions at this thing. So WWE already have a sustainability advantage from day one. Regardless, WWE do risk their popularity shrinking even further if fans learn there's a better, more fulfilling alternative out there. They must tweak their product and hopefully they'll become the most compelling sports entertainment action movie studio of all time. Although really, in the end, I just want both shows and both products and both companies to be bloody great, because it's good for all of us. So, to conclude, Vince McMahon and WWE, they should let AEW worry about chasing star ratings and critical acclaim and all these other things. What they should do is stick to what they've always been the best at, and that's the pantomime. Anyway guys, that's it. My take done, your take now. Head on down to the comment section below, let me know what you think about this whole shebang, about the wrestling war, about who you think will win, and what they need to do to win. Comment section, fire off down there. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. Then you can follow us on Twitter at WWE. No, we're not at WWE. We're at What Culture WWE, Stupid Andy Murray. You can follow me at Andy H. Murray. The H stands for horse. My throat is still absolutely goosed. Anyway, I'm going for a lie down, and I'll see you later.